Family disputes can make us feel isolated and vulnerable. Maybe you're going through a divorce or a legal dispute about your kids. Perhaps you've spent hours on Google or have even posted anonymously on Facebook to see what others have to say. But are you getting the actual information and support that you're looking for? Our podcast, Legal Lounge, aims to dispel misinformation and downright bad legal information to empower anyone with questions about their family, their children, their finances, their marriage, and the law. As a team focused exclusively on family law matters, we aim to help listeners not only with the information they need, but also with the hope that their situation has a solution. Short disclaimer, please note this podcast is for educational purposes only, and the information should not be relied upon as legal advice or for legal purposes. So we're here in the Legal Lounge with a former client of mine, and she has endured the full gamut of what family law has to offer, from a domestic violence order of protection to a child custody and child support dispute to resolving issues pertaining to property, debts, and addressing spousal support. But she joins us from the other side of the divorce. But tell us a little bit more about yourself, other than your name, for privacy purposes.
Sure. So I'm enjoying life 2.0 post-divorce. I am a professional. I work full-time. I am a mom of 2, and I am grateful to have been a client of yours.
You're so sweet to say that. I appreciate it. Let's go back in time, because even though you are post-divorce, and I imagine that took a lot of healing as well.
A lot.
How long was your relationship with your ex?
Legally, I was married for 21 years. Separated for a full year, so married for 20 before the separation was initiated, but legally I was married for 21 years.
How soon after you got married, or far after, did you start seeing red flags that made you think that, okay, this may not last forever?
Yeah. So, being the daughter of 2 parents who have been married for more than 50 years, I saw those red flags probably about 3 years into my relationship, into my marriage, and had to really brush them aside, knowing that, divorce is just not an option in my family. You work things out. And I did attempt to work things out and hung on for 20 full years before I waved my white flag in response to all the red flags that kept popping up again and again.
How did you handle those red flags for so long? Because that sounds like a notable amount of time.
It is a notable amount of time. It's a ton of time. How did I handle them? I wish I could really say that eloquently, but sometimes I didn't handle them well. A lot of avoidance, a lot of probably lying to myself that everything was okay when it wasn't. A lot of blame and shame, saying, if I hadn't done this, or, that's your fault, you brought that on yourself, kind of a thing. And just, like I said, having parents who have been married for over 50 years, not wanting to admit to anybody that, hey, I think this might be a problem. And I'm also a recovered perfectionist, and, just wanted to live that picture perfect life. I didn't want to admit to myself or anybody else that this was not going to work out.
So when did the moment come when you were like, okay, I'm waving this white flag. Mm-hmm. I want to take the steps necessary to get out of this marriage?
That happened on a very, very sad night. We had an episode at our house, like we had several times, but typically the situations would occur late at night when kids were asleep. And this particular one did not happen when the kids were asleep. And for what I thought was the first time, my kids witnessed something that really gave me the courage and bravery I needed to say, I won't tolerate this any longer. And I called a family member that night and just said, oh my gosh, here's what has happened. And they were shocked and sad and immediately went into protective mode. And the next day, one of them called me and said, I've been doing some research online, and I have found a form that I really think that you need to fill out. And so I looked over the form, which happened to be a domestic violence protection order, or a DVPO for short, and got the paperwork filled out and took it to the magistrate's office and said, okay, it's go time. This is done. I'm not putting up with this anymore.
And so you filed the complaint with the magistrate.
I did.
And the magistrate issued what we call an ex parte domestic violence order of protection.
Correct.
And those only exist or are in place for about 10 days.
Yes.
Right. How did you feel during that time period after you got that order and knowing that it was in place for 10 days?
Well, first, when I got the order, I was like, holy cow, what have I just done, right? Like, there's no turning back now, because what happens is the law comes and removes the other party from your home if you're sharing a home, which we were. But at the same time, I remember celebrating with friends and saying, oh my gosh, I have 10 days to just breathe and just figure out my game plan and get my life together and just kind of just breathe, just exhale from everything and know that I had a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
I needed to secure an attorney to help guide me. And I had 10 days to figure it out.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And so during that 10-day time period, I believe that's when we met.
We did.
For the listeners here in North Carolina, that 10-day order, it's only in place because as a filing party, you are going to the courts without the opposing party present.
Right.
To your point that we've discussed before, is that you go on your own. You're doing this all on your own. Yeah. It is free, so yes. that's notable. But you're kind of just trying something that you've never done before, giving very intimate details about an incident that has occurred in your home to seek the protection of a protective order.
Yes.
And so when you go to your attorney, yes, you have this 10-day order of protection, and you feel, you can breathe, safe for the moment. But then I'm sure your head starts swirling of, there are so many other things we need to address.
Oh, yeah. Reality hits really soon. And you start thinking about, well, I own this house. I share bank accounts. I share a bed. Yeah. I share, all kinds of things. And most importantly, we share children. We share a dog. We share a church and friends and all the things. And it's really easy to get overwhelmed by all the details that are going to have to be worked out, which is why I don't know how anybody can manage this without the help of a family law attorney. So luckily I had a friend in the neighborhood who unfortunately had just experienced a divorce and was able to provide you as a resource. And I remember shooting you an email. It might have been in the middle of the night and saying, hey, I think we got to talk. And from there, your guidance and your homework, a lot of homework, helped me get organized around all the next steps.
Yeah. There's no conversation more romantic than discussing a prenup with your partner, right? Okay, maybe the song for your first dance does a bit more in the romance department. Speaking of emotions, though, the prenup is a very legal document that everyone has a very emotional reaction to. Many people avoid the prenup conversation because they feel it is an indication that the marriage will fail. But here's the truth. Half of all marriages already fail, regardless of whether the spouses had the prenup conversation or not. If you or someone you care about is getting married, would knowing what marriage involves legally be important? What about having the difficult conversations surrounding finances, career aspirations, and pursuing parenthood prior to the wedding date? If you are looking to build a solid foundation for your marriage, or you want the same for someone you care about, we are here to help you learn more about prenups from a position of knowledge, not emotion. To learn more about family law from a legal professional, book a consultation with a member of the Modern Legal team by visiting our website, emailing us, or calling us at 704-286-6302. Check out the information about Modern Legal services at modernlegalnc.com. Right after you got that ex parte, we did return to court.
We did.
To ask for a 1-year order of protection.
Right.
And that gets a little stressful because at that hearing, the opposing party they're served with the documents and they are expected to show up.
Yeah.
How did you feel like coming to the courthouse that day and throughout that experience?
Well, first and foremost, I felt tired because I definitely didn't sleep the night before. I remember getting dressed and wearing a very professional outfit to, you act the way that you're dressed sometimes. So I remember wanting to really be impressive with the judge and with you, and to just be ready to do what needed to be done. So I felt good and confident in that regard. I felt confident that I had your backing and that I knew that we were very prepared to take next steps. But I was so nervous. As I was driving, I was realizing that I was going to have to come face to face with the person I had filed an order against and really turned his life upside down. And I didn't know how that was going to be. I remember walking from the parking garage into the courtroom, my little clickety-clackety high heels on, and praying that I wasn't going to fall down. And I remember having to chew gum to keep my jaw from being super tense because I was just so nervous. But I got off the elevator and you were waiting there for me, and we sat together, and you just reminded me, you point him out when he comes off the elevator and I'll take it from there.
Yep.
And that just gave me a lot of peace and calm. But it's very hard to come in contact with that person who's all of a sudden a stranger to you.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, having that family law attorney there, someone that you rely and trust in to help unburden your shoulders.
Yes.
Because I personally experienced the process more so as a child of a bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I can only imagine in your situation where you have very adult responsibilities
Yeah.
and you're raising two kids at the same
Right.
time,
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out how to address their needs,
Right.
both, financial, physical, but also mental and emotional,
Mhm.
because,
Big job.
their dad was just taken out of the house.
Right.
And figuring out the next steps. And I'm sure there were times where you're like, I don't know what is the next step.
Of course.
But then all the homework that I gave you helped.
You did give me a lot of homework. And I'm a type A personality and planner by design. So that was really appreciated. And every time I'd look at the homework, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is so much. But it created the design to get through the whole entire process. And I also think it was very helpful, like you said, to take the burden off my shoulders. You go through this with multiple people in multiple different situations. So you've seen the easy, you've seen the hard, you should go for this, or this is going to be a waste of your time and your resources. So that was very helpful to know, even when I think I had it all figured out, like Teresa's going to tell me what's what.
Yes. And guide you through the process.
And guide me through the process.
And as you are personally aware, when you file something today, you're not necessarily finding a full resolution tomorrow.
No.
This takes time.
Yes.
It is. Yeah. As you've stated a couple of times, it's a process.
It is a process, and it is a temporary process, which is really important to remember. It's, you have to go really slow because the state of North Carolina requires a full year of separation before you can file for divorce. But in hindsight, I see where that year was so valuable because it really does take that long to get everything situated. And sometimes just when you have something situated, it flips upside down. You have to resituate it. So it really does take that full amount of time.
Yeah. And I tell my clients, I'm positive I said this to you, that at the beginning of it, let's not even talk about the D word, the divorce word.
Right.
Because in North Carolina, we have that 1 year. It's like, I don't want you having to process whether or not you want to file for divorce. Because in fact, right now we can't. Right. Because you have to wait the year.
Right.
But we do need to talk about your house. We do need to talk about your kids. We do need to talk about your financial situation. And so in your case specifically, I would say we were relatively fortunate enough to resolve everything at mediation.
Right.
Almost everything.
Almost everything. Yes.
And so how was that process for you?
The mediation process was long. It was a very long day, but it was a good day. It was a really good day. So during mediation, it was nice because attorneys and technically still spouses are all in the same place with a neutral party who bounces from room to room and helps make decisions and brings up questions and considerations. And it actually, if I look back at it, I'm like, that was kind of fun because it's a negotiating situation. But it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. One thing that I said to you multiple times is I don't want to go back to court. I don't want to go back to court. There's so much stress associated with court. It has to happen in most situations, but anytime you can avoid it, it just saves everybody resources. And so mediation was a very positive thing because I was able to walk out the door after about 8 hours and have a roadmap of next steps. And it really helped me realize like, okay, this is what my future could look like.
Yeah. And specifically in your situation, which we can do at mediations because there was domestic violence involved, you and I were actually in a very separate conference room.
Yes.
Like separate environment,
Separate
if you will,
area. Mm-hmm.
than the opposing party and his attorney.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, we were still in the same office generally.
Mm-hmm.
And with the assistance of the mediator, we were able to reach a resolution after a lot of talking.
Yes.
A lot of back and forth.
Yep.
A lot of emotions.
A lot of emotions.
Yes.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, you did not like the mediator.
I did not like the mediator whatsoever. And if mediators listening, I still don't like the mediator.
But to everyone's credit,
yes,
even your ex,
yep,
we were able to find a resolution on everything: the property, spousal support, child custody, and child support.
Everything. Notarized the order there, or the agreement there rather, and walked out the door with a copy of the agreement in hand. So that was good.
And how did you feel, and it may have been a day or so later, but once you processed it, that you were like, okay, we don't have the divorce done just yet, but you have a resolution to all these other family law matters.
Yeah, the resolution for me brought peace. And I'll say it's one of the biggest reasons why is because I got everything I wanted. And I don't want that to sound snarky or inappropriate, but I knew going into it, because you had prepped me so well, like decide on the things that you will be loose on and decide on the things that you'll be tight on. So there were some things that I had to negotiate a little bit in order to have things that were more important to me. But when I walked out of the room that day, or a couple days later when it hit, I was like, oh my gosh, I can plan forward now. Like, yeah, I couldn't get the legal divorce or absolute divorce just yet, but all that I was waiting for in that process was the calendar, right? But aside from that, I had a plan, and I knew the holidays on which I would have my kids. I could plan vacations. I knew the day and time of the week they were going to do dinner with their dad. I could just move on and plan for my future.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that provided you some peace.
Oh, for sure.
And that's one thing you do not have when you're in the process.
Correct.
Because you're always nervous of, well, what could happen?
Yes.
All the what ifs.
Yes. All the time. You're constantly second guessing yourself. You're constantly saying, okay, if I do this or say this, what is he going to do in reaction to this? So you're living in a constant state of turmoil in your head. It doesn't, for me anyway, it didn't ever rest. It was usually 3 a.m. when I'd pop up with like, oh my gosh, I have an idea. And so I trained myself just to jot that down in a journal. And then, most of that stuff came right to you. And one of the great things was, yes, you're an attorney, but you're also a coach. So, you would say to me, okay, I hear you. You use those words a lot. I hear you. Let's consider this. And I would think, I haven't considered this, but I know she knows what she's talking about. So maybe I should consider this. And got some time. You learned very quickly, like how I process information and the space I needed in order to do that. So
yeah, which is crucial, at least from my perspective, because I do have a number of different cases at different stages, is really working with each client on their individual situation.
Yeah.
Because every family is different. Every situation is different. Every
one.
child is different. Right. And I know in your situation, we had slightly older kids, so we weren't dealing with kids under the age of 5.
Right.
But all of that influences both the attorney's concerns and the client's concerns for that resolution. And so you mentioned a moment ago about the custody arrangement specifically, i.e. you knew when you would have the holidays with the kids and when you didn't have the holidays with the kids. How have you been able to cope with that? Because you went from a situation where you saw the kids pretty much every day to a situation where they were spending overnights with dad.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm a mom and, I carried those babies for a long time. And they're my heart's outside my body. That's how I describe my kids. And it's painful. And it was definitely an adjustment period. And I can remember the first Christmas that I did not have them. It was Christmas Eve. And we exchanged kids on Christmas Day. So the week before Christmas, they were with their dad. And that's usually when we're doing all the fun leading up to Christmas traditions and activities and running around town and seeing Santa and all the things. And I just found myself alone. And I walked into the garage to get a tool. I was putting together some toys that night to play Santa the next morning. And I just laid on that cold garage floor and cried my face off. I just sobbed and sobbed because it just wasn't the way it was supposed to be. It's not, but sometimes that's the reality of the situation. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. I would never go back on my decision. I've also learned through friends and groups that I've been part of who've gone through divorce and separation, that it's not so much about a date on a calendar as much as it is when you can all be together. And so it's completely restructured the way that I spend my time with my kids.
Yeah. And so you're able to focus more on the quality of time when you have the kids, because there is that time period you don't.
Right. And so when you do have them, for me, there's things that have to happen in a household. You have to grocery shop. You have to run to Target a million times for stuff you don't need. There's responsibilities that have to be taken care of. But now that I can do that in a time, maybe when they're spending time with their dad, that frees up time when they're with me. And so every moment is even so much more precious than it used to be. So the quality of the time when we're all together is really special and intentional. And that's not necessarily something that would have happened if I continued to stay in a red flag relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've been able to create maybe new traditions or...
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. We're trying to hold true to some traditions that just have meant a lot to them. And, I know that they recognize and think about 4 of us used to do this together and now 3 of us do. And that's okay. Kids go through different ages and stages, and we've created a lot of new traditions, and it works out. The pain of the whole situation is temporary.
And so children, they are... Sometimes we underestimate kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Smart.
Yeah. They are smart. Mm-hmm. They pick up on a lot of things, but they also recover in different ways. Mm-hmm. And really, if you're able to create that healthy environment for them, they're given the opportunity to then flourish.
Yeah. And one of the easiest ways to do that is when you are in mediation. I wouldn't have done this without your recommendation, but we have a statement in our agreement that says that neither parent is to speak poorly of the other in front of the kids, and none of their friends or family members are able to do the same either. And so I did have a conversation with my extended family and said, look, we're not allowed to speak poorly. And everybody has been so respectful of that. It gives me a lot of peace of mind to know that my kids aren't going to be hearing stuff that makes them wonder what kind of person mom is for having made the decision that she had to make. And it also gives me a lot of peace and healing to not be like, I can't legally be able to stay in that stuck place of complaining about him or bad-mouthing him. So with that comes some very natural healing. And that's so good for kids to not have to be able to not be put in the middle and have to form an opinion about either parent. Obviously, they know that there was discontention between us, but that doesn't mean that there has to be an issue between them and either parent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or for a child to feel like they aren't loved by both parents.
Right. Oh, yeah. They've got to have, from a child psychology standpoint, kids struggle when they lack a relationship with one of their parents. And so it was really important to me, even though my words might make it sound like it was easy.
Yeah.
It was not. But it has been really important to me to make sure that they have a strong relationship with both of us. They need us for different reasons and at different times for different things. And that's okay.
And are they doing good today?
They're doing great today.
Yeah.
They are doing really good today. And they're enjoying life 2.0 because they got their mom back, right? So they have me in a different manner. We've always had fun together, but now we really have a lot of fun because I'm a lot more lighthearted than I used to be. And, I was working so hard when things were bad to control any circumstance that I could. So that became a full-time job. And sometimes I had to miss out on being fun and being silly because I was cleaning up messes, and now it's just so much different.
You can be your full self with them.
Completely.
And I'm positive they love you for it.
They do love it. Yes.
Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit. So okay. Mediation, we resolve all those issues, but resolution is one thing. Mm-hmm. Actually making sure both sides follow the agreement, though, is a totally different situation. Totally different situation. And we've run into some roadblocks here and there. But we've been able to resolve them all because at the end of the day, that document says what you can and cannot do. And it's been agreed upon. And, luckily there's a process in place when child support isn't being followed properly or custody pickup and drop-off times are not being adhered to or respected. There's a process where you can go back to court if needed. So it's nice to know that there's no gray area, though. There's just, it's all been spelled out and It's no longer personal. It's just very objective. Here it is in black and white. Here's what we agreed to. Here's what we notarized. Here's what has been filed with the court of North Carolina. And here's what we will follow. Yeah. So it's really nice that it takes all the subjectivity out of things. And to your point, especially when you cited a specific provision, all of your agreement documents, they're a number of pages. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it's not just a 2-3 page form that we fill out. Yeah. No. I wouldn't let you sign that, but. No. Yeah. Yeah. It's very lengthy. It's very detailed. It's got absolutely everything. And I think one of the best pieces of advice I could offer is just to take it slow, to go fast, and to really think about every single aspect of your life that you shared and how that's now going to be broken up. We had to think about a dog and who was going to keep the dog. We had to think about furniture and, who was going to get this and that so that we did have equitable distribution of property for what we mutually owned together for so long. So every single consideration has been spelled out in there. And if there's ever anything that comes up that's not in accordance with that plan, I can just say over email or text, because I need it all in writing all the time, is to just say, please look at page 23, section 2, and you will see where we made this agreement. And then it takes so much emotion and argument out of it. Yeah. Because at this point, it's not about emotions because the marital relationship has ended. That's correct. Yeah. So you're both parents and you will have your kids together for forever. Right? But the marriage has now come to an end. Correct. And then that was formalized when we got that divorce judgment. Right. How did that make you feel? It was weird. I waited for it and I anticipated it for a little over a year. My situation took a little bit over a year. And I thought, man, once I have this in my hands, it's just going to be like a big party and I'm going to celebrate and I won and all the things. And I remember the day that you emailed me and you said, we've gotten this. Congratulations. We're done. It's official. A little part of me was just a little bit sad because this is not the way that it was supposed to go. And I looked back and realized that I had invested more than 20 years. And I thought, well, dang, is that just all gone? And, I'm at the halfway mark of my life. And is this was this worth it? But that questioning very, very quickly turned into, get it, girl. You did the right thing. And you did it well. You did the right thing. You did it well. Yeah. You were strong. You had the courage to get through it. Go one step further. Yeah. You also had 2 kids. Yeah. Born out of the relationship. Right. My mom likes to joke that because she had a bad divorce, but she's like, I got 2 little angels out of it. It's so true. I would not call my brother an angel, but you have certain blessings for sure out of any tumultuous situation. Absolutely. And you said you still have a relationship together, and that's not a relationship in the
exciting sense at all, but we do very much, and you reminded me of this several times along the way, it's a business relationship, and it's all based on business, and our kids, and raising our kids well is our business. And so everything we do, we don't do face-to-face well still, even though a few years have passed, and we know this about ourselves, and we respect that about each other. We've had to make some big decisions for our kids recently as they've been transitioning into new periods of their life, and we've been able to come together to do that. And as we've experienced some things, even with one kid wanting to go to a party, let's say, and I have to say no, well, Dad would let me, well, let's call Dad and find out. We're able to do that over the phone and have those conversations now. It took a long time to get there. And it's pure business. That's it. The only time that we're discussing anything about anything is about the kids. And if it can't be, the conversation doesn't happen. And there's still opinions. I still have opinions about him, and he still has opinions about me. And my favorite line to say is, you cannot complain about the conditions you created. But it just works. Yeah. It works.
Yeah, I like that line.
Yeah, it's a good one. You
cannot complain about the conditions that you are in. Yeah,
that you created.
You created.
Cannot complain about the conditions you created.
That's a deep comment. Yeah. Because whether we like it or not, we are in a world of our own making.
Right.
And so we do have to take steps and take responsibility at times. Mm-hmm. And to make changes where changes are needed. And
change is good.
Yeah, change is good. Proof. Yeah, and change is the one guarantee in life, right? That's right. We're all going to continue to change.
Yeah.
So one last question, just because I feel like, obviously, if I answer this question, I'm biased.
Okay.
But what are the things to look out for when you are searching for a family law attorney for your situation?
That's a really good question. Well, do your homework, first of all, right? Mm-hmm. Like I said, I had a neighbor who recommended you to me. So she's a trusted friend. So I was able to go on that at first. But of course, you've got to do your homework. You need to look on their websites. You need to make sure that you're a good match. One of the things that I recognized on your website is that you had a domestic violence section on there. And I was able to read and find out, like, is what I'm experiencing truly domestic violence? Have I made this all up in my head? Because you start to feel crazy going through the process. But your website was laid out with, here's why you might need me, and here's what I can help you do. So that was super helpful. But then before you retain somebody, you've got to make sure that you're a good fit, right? Like, I know that I'm super organized. I need somebody to be very responsive when I'm in need of some answers. But I also knew, because there was so much emotion attached, that I needed somebody who would calm me down when I needed to be calmed down, and to really not take me personally when I was having a rough day. That's something you did very well. Yes. Very, very well. And then just to look at credibility. One thing that I think is so awesome about you is that every time I turn around on your social media or on your website, there's a new award, and you're so invested in your community and learning about the system, and you know your stuff. So even though you need an attorney to help you, there's just no way to manage this by yourself. There's just no way. In North Carolina, it's so complex. I think that, just as you were interviewing me to see if you wanted to take me on as a client, I really had to interview you as well and make sure that you were going to be able to respond to me the way that I needed to be.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I joke, but I do say to individuals that looking for an attorney is kind of like shopping for shoes. Just because, they're in your size and it looks like your style, it does not mean it's going to be a good fit.
Does not mean it's going to be a good fit. And you stretched me on days where I needed to be stretched. And, on the other side of it, I see where I'm like, dang, Teresa was good. And I can recommend you to all of my friends and tell them, she knows her stuff, so you don't have to. She knows her stuff. You do not have to. There was not a single situation where I had to figure things out by myself.
Well, I'm humbled by such an accolade. That's probably the best award possible, is someone who can not only feel that they had good representation through their personal situation, but that such representation would be trusted for another loved one of yours.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Your balance of empathy and education to your craft is just perfect.
Oh, thank you. Oh, you're so sweet. Well, thank you so much for joining me here in the Legal Lounge.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sure you will likely be back again.
I hope so.
And yeah, we are honored to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our discussion. To learn more about me and the Modern Legal team, go to our website, modernlegalnc.com, or check out the links in our show notes to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can also call us at 704-286-6302. If you have been intrigued by the conversation and would like us to continue our discussions, please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. See you next time.